social media derby. Obviously, we're in for a great episode today based off of what happened this weekend with Man United winning the FA Cup. But we've also got a great episode ahead with our end of season awards. So we're going to be going through all of the best and worst players and teams and managers from across the season so far. But before we do that, obviously, as always, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and share it if you can. Also, feel free to comment down below based off of anything that we say in the show. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please follow us and give us a 5-star review if you can. As always, it helps with the algorithm and getting us in front of more people. But let's get on to the show. Ant, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Still in a state of shock, but positive. Much better than I thought it was going to be on this pod. I resigned myself to just having to moan and whinge and scream at someone on my own team. But pleasant surprise, I get to cuss out Man City, so it's beautiful. How about you?
There we go. Yeah, no, I'm doing pretty well as well. As you obviously know, I was supporting United in the final as well, because we can't have City winning everything. So I was also pleasantly surprised, and obviously it's easier said than done as a non-Man United fan to be so confident. But at certain points in the game, obviously was trying to help you, nut up a little bit and be a bit more confident of your win. But obviously, a big win for Man United. So let's get on to that then. So a 2-1 Man United win. A lot of things to talk about here, the manager, the performance, etc. Let's get on to the performance first. Obviously, start out with a goal. I can't remember what minute it's in, but it's into the first half. Early doors. A bit of a cock-up between old Gvardiol and Ortega. Manages somehow to head it over his goalkeeper into the path of Garnacho, who puts it away. I think a relatively well-worked goal, but what were your thoughts on the goal in general? Who do you think it's down on? Is it Gvardiol error? Is it an Ortega error? Is it Garnacho just being really good? How did you view it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously a mix-up between the two, but you're probably going to put a bit more blame at Ortega's door, just because I feel like he's probably got to give him a shout, or just probably hang back on his line. If he hangs back a little bit, then he's just going to catch the ball, isn't he? And it's not going to go flying over his head. So I think Gvardiol doesn't do anything too much wrong in that scenario, other than I guess he's got to try and think on his feet when he can see Ortega running up and coming, a lot closer to him. He could probably make a last-minute change of decision. But having said that, he's kind of wrestling with Garnacho. He's running at speed. I feel like it's harsh on him. He's obviously cocked it up, but I feel like it's more of a Ortega mistake than a Gvardiol one. Garnacho just does what he should. I mean, this is par for the course for him, isn't it? Like, I mean, sometimes he lacks a bit of quality, but what you know about him is that he's going to run his nads off and he's going to work hard and he's going to chase sometimes lost causes. So I didn't see anything from him that was like super outstanding, just kind of what he does. And we're really fortunate, but we needed it. For us to win this game, we needed to score the first goal and, we needed the first couple, really. So,
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that Gvardiol obviously been a star for City. He ends up being, along with Ortega, obviously, but also Ortega for the same reasons, actually, with the save off of Son. But the two kind of, let's say, stars of their season, at least in the back, end up being the ones that lead to the opener for Garnacho. So it's ironic, but you obviously then went on to a very, very well worked goal, right? So it starts off in your half. Very good play from Bruno to Kobe to Rashford, who sprays one diagonally across the field to Garnacho. You actually see a lot of desire from a lot of players to get up there quickly. You get a nice little cut inside from Bruno to oh, sorry, not from Bruno, but from Garnacho to Bruno, and then a kind of a no look, it looks like, from Bruno to Kobe, and then a very well worked finish. Thoughts on the goal in general? Do you think it was? I mean, who do you really think the star of that goal is?
It's hard, man. I've heard a lot of people talk about the goal. And at the moment, a lot of the praise is obviously going to Kobe for the finish. I've seen a lot of extra praise being given to Bruno now for the no look pass, which when you actually look at it a couple of angles, you're like, bloody hell, it was pretty good. Um, and yeah, obviously Rashford with a great sprayed diag that goes all the way over to Garnacho. So I mean, it's a beautifully worked goal. I've seen a lot of people. We've had this combos a million times about counter attacking transition, kind of this bit of football snobbery about that
You've been
style
doing it
of
for
play.
30 years,
But
apparently.
yeah, exactly. It was Salty Pep was saying that, but we'll get to that later. I thought it was a beautifully worked goal, and I think it's harsh to call it counter because I don't think they were actually like all over the shop, and it weren't like they were super attacking and then we flipped it on them. But it was a transition, so we won the ball obviously in our half. But I really liked every aspect of that goal. I've got to be honest. You weren't really having it, but I really liked Bruno's little shimmy to start the move off. I think he kind of sold Kovacic a kipper to get over to Mainu, but then every single thing after that was executed perfectly for it to end up with the finish. I think Kobe's going to get loads of praise for the finish because he tucked it away, and my King Kobe, love him. But I actually think Ortega, I don't know what he's doing there. He doesn't even attempt to dive, and it's not like Kobe tucks it in the side netting. He actually puts it just slightly to the side of Ortega. Um,
It's
and I
within
don't know
perfect
why he
kicking, like leg blocking
either
range,
leg
and
or
it's
arm.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like
I
the
don't know
Son
what he's
one
doing.
it was harder. Like the Son one,
Yeah, exactly.
his leg was further outstretched, and he managed to get a foot on that one. But this one, I think it kind of just took him by surprise, to be honest with you, because it was just one touch, one touch, one touch. So I kind of
Yeah, yeah,
understand why he was a bit off guard, because I think
yeah.
he was probably expecting Bruno to have a pop. I think a lot of people, even the cameraman included, was expecting Bruno to have a pop. So I don't fully blame him, but yeah, I think Allison, a better goalkeeper, probably does get a foot on that. But obviously there
Anything
was a
really,
couple of
yeah, probably.
yeah. I mean, he wasn't the only one, let's say, and let's move it on there to let's say not the only one to do a bit of a cock up in goal. Um, obviously at halftime, Pep makes changes. KDB gets hooked at halftime, or I guess early into the second half, and I think he brings on, is it Julian Alvarez?
Yeah,
I can't
yeah, yeah.
remember who it is specifically, but he brings somebody on for KDB. And I mean, there's not a massive change really in momentum as far as I can see. Obviously, Man United being 2-0 up tend to maybe sit a little bit deeper, and Man City obviously want to try and pile on the pressure because they've got to chase the game, right? And I think that's natural for both sides. Like if I'm 2-0 up against one of the best teams in the world, I'm not going to be bombing forward and going gung ho, right? So it makes sense from Man United's perspective. And then obviously Man City are trying their absolute best to try and break through them. Um, I mean, nothing comes for a very, very long time, right? I think it's deep into the second half when they actually manage to get a proper chance outside of the Haaland, and you've obviously argued with me about this one not being a chance necessarily, but outside of the Haaland kind of effort where he smashes it off the bar, they're one and only, I would say. I'm not even going to say it's a clear cut chance. I get it's not even a clear cut chance, but they're one and only, I guess, effort to get a goal past you. Um, Doku does what he usually does, cuts inside. Garnacho, really good effort from him to try and get something on the ball, but Doku manages to get a shot off, goes
Mm.
past everybody, and somehow goes past your goalkeeper as well, who palms it into his own side net and at the near post. Got to get your thoughts on that. You being a goalkeeper growing up, how did you find that one, mate?
Yeah, we put a bit of a curse in it on all the players on all sides because we put Gvardiol, both of us put him at left back of the season in our team of the season last week, and he contributed to the clanger on the first goal. Phil Foden was absolutely missing throughout the whole game. I know he gets credited the assist because he gives a little pass to Doku for this goal, but it's one of those cheeky ones where it's not really an assist. He went missing. And yeah, I gave Onana my rookie of the season keeper for his performances back end of the season, and don't know what he's playing at. He almost looks like he's trying to catch it, which you know what? A lot of the time, I'm pretty harsh on goalies, and I'll say, why don't they catch things? Why do they punch? Why do they parry things out? But I think that shot was not the right moment to try and catch it. Um, I think you just parry it around the post, concede a corner, and we're all good. It was hit quite hard, but it wasn't like flying through. And he managed to see, have a good sight on the ball. So I think it's just a technical error from him, and that's my worry with Onana. You know what I mean? Like his reactions aren't bad, his kicking is not bad. He came and claimed the ball beautifully in that second half. Took a lot of pressure off us. So I was really pleased with what he was doing from that aspect. But when it comes to getting down low and doing some real basic foundational goalie stuff like parrying balls and kind of just getting a strong hand on things, or you were saying his fingers are like biscuit fingers because it tends to be his fingers that kind of let him down when it comes to making those kind of saves. And I can't argue with it. It's a clanger. He shouldn't let that in his near post. But I actually, one thing you did miss, I think City didn't really create a lot. You're right, and we argued about the Haaland one, but obviously at the bar, Alvarez had a one-on-one. I watched the highlights back again. That Alvarez
where he
one-on-one
drags it. Yeah, it's
sends
probably
it
their only
like
clear cut chance of the match, right?
what a miss! Yeah. I mean, what Walker like had a thunderbolt from about 25 yards, but that wasn't really a chance. He hammered it from far out, and Anana, to be fair to him, made a good reaction save. But yeah, there weren't loads of chances. They had loads of the ball, but I think we did really well stifling the midfield. We congested it up, so I think that's why obviously Pep decided to bring Doku on to try and have a go on the flanks. But it's funny, isn't it, when you watch a game? Because at the time I was like, Wan-Bissaka's annoying me. I feel like Doku's really having his way with him, and you were kind of defending Wan-Bissaka, weren't you? And I watched back the highlights or like the clips of Wan-Bissaka going head to head with Doku, and to be fair to him, he won the battle most of the time. So you were spot on. It was only kind of in the last 5-10
Yeah.
minutes where Doku had a bit of joy with him. And I would even argue when he scored the goal, it's not really Wan-Bissaka's fault, and he didn't really create that much. So I think our game plan was good, and the players executed it well. Because I think Bernardo is still in Dallow's pocket right now. He did nothing, and yeah, Doku. He was a threat, but he didn't really pull off that much. And I don't even know who played left wing before him. That's how anonymous they were from that side. So yeah, I mean, it made it nervy, right? And I was hiding behind the couch for the last 5 minutes plus added time. So I think that's more to do with my experiences with Man United this season in late moments in games that caused me to feel like that. And you were right, probably at the time, saying, "Nah, it's not going to happen," because just the way City were playing. To be fair, there were no scares. We saw it out, and there was no problems. So, but it made for the game to be a bit nervy. But after the game, I was being a bit greedy, wasn't I? I was like, I don't like seeing that one next to Man City's name. I don't think they deserved to score a goal today, and I feel like we were worthy winners. But we can get onto that now, I guess, with the questions that are coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing, right? So let's just talk about. Do you think, because obviously there's going to be people looking at stats, right? And I'm looking at them right now. 74% possession for Man City, 1.35 expected goals, 19 shots with only really one big chance created. Whereas you, 26% possession. Funnily enough, 1.59 expected goals, so a higher XG, 11 shots and two big chances created. So, I mean, it kind of shows like the story of two different kind of games, really. There is like they're dominating possession, having a lot of shots, but not really creating any big chances. Whereas you guys don't have the ball very much, but you're able to create big chances and higher XG off of fewer shots and having the ball less. So, I mean, from your point of view, how do you read those stats and how do you read the game on the eye test in general? Because obviously Pep came out and said, did Man United deserve to win the game? I think he says no, right? He says he thinks that City deserved to win the game. He talks about transition football. And of course, a lot of opposition fans are going to be saying, they dominated you throughout that game if you look at momentum, etc. How did you view the game? Do you think, I know you just alluded to it there, do you really think that you fully deserve to win the game? Like, how would you describe your performance versus theirs? Do you think it was an even game? Do you think it was
No,
one-sided to your side? What do you think?
I don't know if I could say it was one sided or like because stats can skew things, or people having the ball, people's view on whether having the ball is is king for them, or we talked about maybe some football snobbery towards kind of counter-attacking transitional football, um, and a lot of people preferring having the ball. For me, we 100% deserve to win that game. We were the better team when it comes to executing a game plan, and I think the XG, even though we had less of the ball, less shots, although more big chances, you said 2-1, right?
Yeah.
Like we clearly we nailed our game plan, and for them to have all of the ball, have 19 shots, only create one big chance. I'm sorry, like I read those stats and I disregard the possession thing, because I feel like with certain teams you've got to just disregard it. When you play City, disregard it. When you went to the Etihad, you were swimming around in 20 to 30% possession as well, and you like having the ball, right? Like that's what's gonna happen against City. Brighton, the same thing. Unfortunately, you've got you can't fight them for possession. You have to try and have a game plan to try and stifle them in different ways and try and come up with a way to hurt them when you do have the ball. And we've tried this kind of tactic multiple times with many different managers. Sometimes it's worked with Ollie a few times. Yeah, there was a period when we constantly used to beat them. With Ten Hag, it's been mixed. And this season, at least, they've spanked us both times. But this time, he got the tactics perfectly spot on. And now it kind of feels like the last few weeks of the season, he was kind of testing this out. Because away at Brighton, he adopted a similar tactic and we won 2-0. And they're a similar team in terms of having the ball and the way they build the play up and everything like that. So I feel like it was a perfect storm. We got the tactics right. The players executed almost perfectly. And then when we got our chances, we took them. And I think no one can. I feel like anyway, I'm not going to have it when Pep or anyone says, City deserve to win or a smash and grab or anything along those lines. I think any fair-minded, non-biased person would say that they think we deserve to win that game, and we carried out the game plan better. And for a team that has so many dangerous players, either they deserve to be criticized either they deserve to be criticized for going missing, or I prefer to look at it as we completely X'd them out. Like KDB got taken off, like you said, early doors. He was trying to get on the ball, he couldn't do anything. And then Phil Foden was completely anonymous, diving around like a little rat. And then I like Foden, but that's how he was in that game.
I mean, he did create himself a chance with hitting the bar, but outside of that, he did pretty much nothing.
Yeah, he deserves a bit of credit for that strike because, like you said, it was a half chance really at best, but he made it look like a good chance because he struck it so well, and he placed it almost perfectly. But he was in Lissandro and Varane's pocket for the rest of that game, did nada. So yeah, I prefer to look at it, and I'm not trying to be super biased, and I've been very critical on my own team, but I think United deserve credit more than Man City deserve to be chastised for this. This performance.
Let's talk about that then. Well, let's talk about that part then, right? You say that he's talking out of his bottom. Well, obviously, there's been, with the whole Ten Hag saga, right? Everything, the leak that came out a couple of days before the match, all of this stuff, right? There's been obviously a lot of focus around him. He seemed to be giving interviews left, right, and centre to everyone. And in a lot of the interviews, and at least in the main one on BBC that we were watching, they were asking him around, like, you haven't been able to show it so far this season. Like, what was different in this game? And obviously, he's pointed very clearly to the fact that, in his 2 years at the club, I think he said maybe 4 or 5 times he's actually had all players available for the match. And obviously, he's alluding to the fact that injuries have been a big part of his season. So when I ask you, why were you able to be so effective in that game and maybe the Brighton game versus almost every game before that? I'm not going to completely discredit you. You had a couple of good games here and there, but you were mostly woeful in performance. Why were you able to do it? Do you think injuries is the excuse, or do you think it's down to Ten Hag just changing up the style?
I don't think there's one one reason. Like a team can't be that poor. Like, all right, I'm laughing at some of your language, it's hilarious, but you could definitely say we've been woeful, we've been poor, all the bad words to describe a team that you had. I wouldn't say high expectations of, but we finished third last season, won the Carabao Cup. The expectation was that we would continue along that trajectory.
Yeah,
Even if it was a very fast turnover, if you think where we were before Ten Hag took over, still you expect things to, in every aspect of life, right? We hope things are going to go linear and keep getting better rather than having ups and downs. But like most things in life, it didn't go that way, and I don't think there's one reason. So I think the injuries are a super valid excuse, play a big part in how we've struggled in our core areas of our team with defense and defensive midfield and a lot of things like that. But at the same time, like we had discussed after the game, you know, our tactics could have been changed earlier. Ten Hag could have maybe taken a different approach. He could have maybe abandoned certain things and tried other things earlier, and that was in his control. But for whatever reason, he's misjudged it, or he's stubborn, or whatever the reasons are, he's decided to take the approach that he has. So yeah, I think there's multiple reasons. Also, famously, all our managers when they leave the club talk about all the background disarray as well that is often
yeah,
involved at United, and we can't ignore the fact that we've had not a full takeover, have we? But we've had all the drama with the sale and all the people coming in and out, high turnover of
the
people, all
Sancho
these people,
stuff.
the Sancho, all the dramas. But again, you can blame some of that stuff on Ten Hag as well. But or you could give him a portion of that blame as well. So it's
Yeah,
so many things, man. So many things. But I think, of course, he's going to argue the injuries, right? He can't turn around and say, I've cocked this up. It's all, it's my fault. He's got to point to
yeah,
something that is out of his control. And the injuries have played a big part. Losing all your defense and playing 70 different million different combinations in central defense, or whatever the number is, it's hard to play well with that kind of constant change happening. And I think, I'll be honest with you, we don't want to do all the comparisons, but if you look at the best teams, a lot of the best teams have had stable back lines, and that's something, the foundation that you build on. Even if you could say our back line hasn't been our weakest point this season, I agree, um, but it is a big part of your, the foundation of a good team is having a solid back four and goalkeeper. And our goalkeepers had up and down form. You can't really blame Ten Hag for that, right? You can only blame Onana really for that, or kind of look at him as to why that's happened. But the back line, you can say we haven't had a left back all season. I was happy to even see Terrell Malacia still alive. I was kind of tongue in cheek joking, but seeing him pick up the medal was heartwarming to know he's still about, because hopefully we'll have him back soon. And Luke Shaw's just the invisible man, the missing man. He's never there. So that's obviously pretty critical. And then centre back pairs have
but
been all over the place. Injuries
but
to all of the combos. So
on that point, I agree with you, right? Obviously, a backline is critically important to consistency, right? Because I think your backline is the spine of your team alongside of the centre midfield positions, right? So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that point. And if you look at Man City, if you look at Arsenal, if you look at, I mean, even if you look at, teams like Aston Villa, they've had a relatively stable, either they've got a relatively stable backline or they've got a lot of depth in those positions, right?
mm-hmm.
Now, on top of that, though, you have to point to the fact that while your backline has not been stable, you could be like Liverpool, which they've also had a relatively unstable backline, right? I mean, obviously their best player has been mostly available the whole time in Virgil van Dijk. But I mean, their goalkeeper, Alisson's been out for large portions of the season. Trent obviously had a lot of injury problems. Andrew Robertson seems to be getting more and more injuries now, and nowadays they've had to be playing like Kwanzaa, Konate is not always around. And I think the reason why they were able to really come back from things is because they were able to compensate with their attack, essentially, right? They've got obviously world-class players in their attack, and they've got a lot of depth in that attacking position, so they were able to just continuously come back from games, pull themselves back into it. And I think for you guys, if you weren't going to have your defenders all available, you had to rely on your attackers to really pull you out of bad situations. And unfortunately, they weren't really able to pull you out of too many bad situations, obviously not including the last few games. So I think it's a combination of both. But I definitely certainly agree with you that, you know, the injuries in your back line and elsewhere as well have been really important factors to how you are able to field a team and the quality at which you're able to execute tactics. I still would argue that a lot of the tactics this season have been weird and strange.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And
I agree with it completely.
I mean, like, even if you execute them well, they still might not win the game. And that's really the issue that I've got with his tactics. But I mean, moving on, obviously with Ten Hag now, he's got a trophy again. So he's got 2 trophies back to back. Not a very good league position. Obviously the worst league position you've had in the Premier League era, but he still managed to come out with a trophy. It looked like old Ratcliffe was not, even despite winning a trophy, was not all that pleased. And obviously there's been all this stuff going on. Do you think Ineos are still going to fire Ten Hag, as has been reported or leaked from so many different sources? And if yes, or I guess if no, if yes, do you want him to stay? So let's get onto that first before we talk about anything else. Do you think they're going to keep him, and do you want him to stay?
So I'm 50-50 on do I think they'll keep him. I'm almost certain that if we'd have lost the final, he would have been given his walk-in orders, marching orders already, and we would have heard, you would have seen Man United official press release, official announcement go out already. I do think the win, the manner of the win, and the fans' reaction to a lot of the leaks has made them kind of
backtrack,
second guess themselves. Yeah, and now you're seeing all this stuff saying, oh, they're doing a full-scale review on the manager this week, actually, and it's not decided yet. 50-50, all this rubbish. So yeah, I think it's 50-50, man. I have to be honest. I really think I was almost certain that the result of the final wasn't going to impact the decision either way. But I think the turn of events has really shaken things up. And I'm glad, because I want him to stay. When I look at that pool of managers that are available, and if you look at things now from a wider kind of perspective and lens, you can't sack a manager after finishing 3rd, winning a Carabao Cup, finishing 8th and winning an FA Cup. Like, I know we've been poor and had really shaky moments this season pretty much throughout, but you have to take everything into consideration and also look at what he's done in terms of giving us silverware as well. And I don't believe silverware is be all and end all, because at some point Wigan won an FA Cup but still got relegated. The league position can be so poor that silverware can't mask it. But I just don't think you can sack him after this victory. And you know what I've been saying before this. I've always said, do I think they'll sack him? Yes. Do I want them to sack him? No. And this hasn't changed anything, unfortunately. Because looking at that pool of managers that are available and knocking about.
Well, let's get into that then. Let's imagine that they do sack him, right? Which is, as you say, it's probably a 50-50 at this point. It was looking more like a 90-10 before the game. Now it seems to have shifted, obviously, with the fact that you won the cup. But if he does go, who do you think, or who do you want to replace him? And I want everyone to bear in mind, I think there's just been a news leak to say that Kieran McKenna looks like he's going to sign a long-term deal with Ipswich. So it looks like he could end up staying. So, I mean, based off of that, who do you think is a suitable replacement for him?
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear this news. This David Ornstein see his siren post come up and say Kieran McKenna's going to sign a long-term deal. I think that's right for him and right for us. The only deal I think he could have taken that I could have understood is if he went to Brighton. But I don't think he should have gone to Chelsea or United. I think he's making the right decision. And I think, considering that, we'll probably end up going for Tuchel or Poch, I reckon. I don't think I don't think Thomas Frank will get the nod as much as you love him. I don't think De Zerbi will get the nod either. Um, interestingly enough, it looks like Chelsea are going to get Maresca, right? So
Yeah. So
so
De Zerbi's going somewhere. We just don't know where.
yeah. I mean, I would actually put De Zerbi as the dark horse if you know. Most likely, I think it will be Tuchel or Poch. But if it's not, it might be De Zerbi. But you know what? Poch would be my favourite personally if I could choose. Um,
Hmm.
I really rate him as a manager. I think he's made some poor personal decisions with the choices of clubs that he's gone to since Tottenham. But I think he's a really good manager, and I think he works well with young players. And I think if we want to actually do a project, like we kind of say we are, I think he's the best choice out of the three. I think Tuchel's kind of in that Conte, Mourinho mold where he just like he can win stuff, but he just blows shit up afterwards, and it's all
Hmm.
disarray afterwards. And I really like him as a person. I've heard him talk, and he's very charming, and like he's got a lot of the same traits, right, as those other managers in terms of like he kind of gets you on board. But I just don't think it would be good for us long term. And I think De Zerbi is quite volatile like that as well. I don't think he's a
Hmm.
guarantee to win anything, but he's probably just as much of a guarantee to cuss out the board or kind of lose his marbles. So I would go for Poch, but I'm praying and crossing all my fingers and touching all the wood to pause no diddy to hope that we're going to keep Ten Hag and we'll just go ahead with
Hmm.
him and just give him the last season. He's got one more year left on the deal. If he does well, extend. If he doesn't do well, get your own man in after that, I reckon.
And it's an interesting one now because of the way that things have gone from an opposition fan's perspective. Let's say that I hate Man United, right? Regardless
Let's
of what
say, huh?
happens, yeah, regardless of what happens, it's kind of like someone is going to look bad in this situation, right? So if I give you the example, and let's say they keep Ten Hag, right? He's come out now saying yesterday, I don't know if I'm going to be here. If I'm not ending up going, if I'm not going to end up here, I'll go somewhere else and win trophies. Been relatively like defiant in his speeches and his responses to questions. So he's never really shown that level of defiance previously, right? He's always been relatively harmonious in terms of how he spoke to about the board and about Man United, and for that reason, I mean, him staying is going to first of all make your upper management look bad, right? Because there's people already starting to question: do Ineos really know what they're doing if this is how they're going to behave in certain situations, right? So if he stays, they look bad. If he goes, a lot of Man United fans clearly, I think there's been a number of polls put out recently, like Andy Mitten and a few others have been putting out polls to say, do you want him to stay or not? And they've been almost 90-10 or 80-20 in terms of we want Ten Hag to stay. So if they do sack him, the upper management is also going to look bad for like, why have you gone and done that? And especially if they go and hire somebody that, let's say, you guys are not in agreement with, even more so, they're going to look bad. So from an opposition fans' perspective, this is the perfect way to kick off the new Ineos project at Man United, because they seem, regardless of what happens, to not really know what they're doing, or to be, you know, to be a little bit, iffy on their decision making. So, I mean, from my perspective, I'm happy to see it. I would obviously love to keep Ten Hag in the league just because it's funny, and it seems that when he's there, a lot of things happen, right? It's not just a quiet time. It's just up and down, bumpy for the club. So from my point of view, either way, it's looking good. I'm happy to see it. If you've got to win a trophy to let this happen, I'm happy to see it. It's like a soap opera. But in saying all of that, as an opposition fan, as an Arsenal fan, I've already started to see it in some group chats. Some Man United fans shamelessly saying that you've had a better season than us. So, Anthony, after winning this
Mm.
FA Cup and coming eighth in the league, what is your opinion? Have Man United had a better overall season than Arsenal?
Um, I'm gonna be honest and say I don't think so, but this trophy has made me like make it's more of a consideration now. I would say, and I think it's It's like based on your ideology, really. If you're all about winning cups and lifting silverware and stuff like that, and you kind of feel that way generally about all trophies, right?
Hmm.
Then I get it. You might have the opinion that we've had a better overall season because we've won something, and you guys have got very close, but not.
Hmm.
Um, but I think if we just use a common sense a bit, you can see the football that both the teams have been playing, the performances, like you said, the noises coming out of the clubs during the season, and I feel like it's quite obvious that Arsenal have had a better season overall to me. Um, but I will say, you guys can't keep kind of having these kind of
Trophyless
seasons where you're
seasons. Yes.
not only it's not only trophyless, because I'll give you an example. Yeah, let's say you guys finish second, but you're maybe not as close to Man City as you have been this year. But you get to semi-finals, finals, quarterfinals, maybe of other. I know you got to quarterfinal of the Champions League. Let's say semi-finals or finals of other cups, and you get close. Then I think it would be undeniable. But I think because you've dropped out of the FA Cup early, dropped out of the Carabao Cup early, done decent in the Champions League, but I would say it's probably like a passing grade, right, for you in the Champions League, get to the quarterfinals and lose because you didn't really play the best ever. I know Bayern Munich are heritage and everything, but if you'd have gone out to City or Real Madrid or I don't know, someone who was like absolutely thumping their league and thriving, I think you could have stomached it a bit more. But I feel like you probably had a bit of a chance really against Bayern, didn't you? And it was kind of a bit of experience and nous that let you down. Um, I think the argument would be a closed book. I don't think any United fans, shameless or not shameless, could even discuss it. But I think it's because of that, um, the conversation is kicking off. But I think considering we finished eighth, I think it's not even a call. I think if we finish
Hmm.
top four as well, I think you could have a better argument around it. But because we were so woeful in the league, woeful in the Champions League as well. Let's not forget that. I'm trying to forget it, but we finished bottom of that group.
Yeah.
A really poor group. I just feel like it's one step too far. We might be able to chat to Liverpool and those guys and say, we may have had a slightly better season than you guys, but I think it's one step too far. But yeah, you guys need to do something, man. You need to pick up something. You need to leave with something next season, I reckon, and that will be the
Hmm.
next evolution for you guys. Challenge again, hopefully win the Prem. But if you finish second, okay. But you got to pick up something somewhere else. You've
Yeah.
got to. Arteta needs to start having some trophies next to his name, otherwise, um, otherwise it just feels like a bit empty. Like you're doing so much, and I understand you're proud of the performances, everything's doing well, but you've got to have something to show for it. Otherwise, you're going to be clutching onto community shields and European Super Cups and Club World Cups like certain other clubs. At the end of his reign, and you don't want to be. You want to turn around and
No,
say,
I
look at all these
understand.
FA
I
Cups and
understand.
Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues.
And I think I'm going to address this to the wider, I guess, the audience and just in general, not necessarily to you. But my question would always be, if this was Brighton or Fulham that came eighth and won the FA Cup, would we argue that they are or that they have had a better season than Arsenal? Right. And my point in saying that is that because it's Man United, I feel like people are not giving you extra credit if that makes sense, but it's because you're supposed to be one of the top challenging teams that people will say, "Oh yeah, because you finished eighth and got a trophy, you've had a better season than Arsenal." I don't remember any West Ham fans. I mean, there might have been some last season, and I know it's not apples to apples,
They
but
did. I
I mean, like
definitely heard them
they
say
were
that.
coming out and saying that they've had a better season than us because they won the Conference League. And I'm not going to say the Conference League is as good as the FA Cup because obviously the competition that you came across was way better. But it's a bit cheeky, you know what I mean, to come out and say, we did terribly in the league, but we won a trophy, so
Mm.
have that, right? And that's where I would kind of draw the line, as if we considered you to be a different team that wasn't Man United, that wasn't one of the challenging clubs, people probably wouldn't argue it as much, right?
Therefore,
I think
I
it's the
agree.
fact that you're Man United. It's the fact that you won something last season as well. all of these things kind of contribute to the story of Arsenal have had 2 seasons of coming second and not winning anything, and you've had 2 seasons of, I guess, winning something and having a decent and terrible performance in the league, right? So I think that's where I would just question people to put it into a slightly different perspective before they start doing this. But I know for the most part, this is just a fan argument, right? Like no pundits, no serious people are really going to have this conversation like at a really high level. I think it's more to say, you know, I'm a Man United fan. I'm going to lord it over you that you didn't win anything this season, right? So
Yeah.
from that perspective, I understand it. But yeah, from my point of view, I'll be honest with you, I don't know why we're talking about better seasons unless you won the league. Like, unless you won the league or the Champions League, no one cares how well you did. And in the end, I know they say, oh, people will remember trophies and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true because I know Arsenal have won 14 FA Cups, but I don't know when they were necessarily. I can't go back and say all of the different ones. And I don't think you could necessarily go back and say all the 13 that you've won, right? Alongside all the, you know, the league cups that you've won.
Some stand out, though. Some stand out.
Yeah,
though,
of course, some stand out. But I think my point is that people say, you know, oh, no one will ever remember a second. I remember quite clearly people pulling up, you know, Man United coming second under Jose being his biggest achievement. I know people will say stuff about Tottenham coming second to Leicester, or I can't even remember if it was them. But yeah, there are some seasons that stand out to people coming second. And I honestly, unless you win, in my opinion, unless you win the Premier League or the Champions League, the rest of them don't really matter. And that's obviously coming from a person who supports a team that hasn't won anything in a while. So, you know, from my point of view, unless you're winning the league or the Champions League, I don't think really we even should bother talking about it because it's a bit sad, isn't it? So it feels like a very Tottenham fan type of conversation to be having. Is my point.
Well, no, I think every season you got to look at what trophies. Like we all want to win something. I think the top aims should always be like. I agree with you on that point. Premier League and Champions League should be your top aims for sure. If you're not able to be in that position, which unfortunately not every team, big or small or whatever size, is in that position. I'm not saying money wise. I just mean like in terms of the progression, the harmony of your team. You've got to go for what else you can get. And at this period, pretty much since Fergie's left, really, United have been a cup team. We've had a couple of second place finishes, but we've been miles off it. In reality, right? We haven't really had any races, and we found the most joy in cups. So I don't think there's any shame in that. That's all good. But I just think the shameless part is just how bad we've been in the league. And I think last season there was a bit of an argument because we finished third and won Carabao Cup, and you guys finished second and won no other trophies. Then it's a bit of a debate, right? But because that outlier, that stinky number 8, as much we love 8s, but stinky number 8, I don't think this is just like you said. It's just a banter thing, and I think you could argue manager to manager who's been more successful. You could use the trophies and throw things in, but as clubs, come on, it's just not really a combo, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
just for banter purposes, yeah, we've been better than you, but yeah, let's move on.
All right. Well, congratulations, mate. I've got to say it to you, Ten Hag, whether he stays or not. Congratulations to him and the team. Obviously, it's great to see Kobe and Garnacho and Højlund and so on. These young players get a chance to win something as well, especially after the disappointment of last season. It's nice to see some of those young players be able to turn it around. At the same time, I've got to say, Ten Hag, mate, please just, if you do stay, stick some socks on, would you? Socks, smart shoes with a suit. Come on, do something. This isn't a fashion show, but I mean, at the end of the day, come on, mate, you're better than that.
Yeah, exactly. London Fashion Week.
But obviously, yeah, that wraps up, I guess, the last Premier League / English football conversation to really have around actual games.
Wait. Now... We need to stick it to Man City first a little bit. We need to stick it to Man City a little bit just before we move on, please. Pep, Rodri, who else is a mouthy little prick? Bernardo, who else? There's other people too. A lot of your, a few of your fans that you have, hold it firmly and tightly, because the amount of breeze you guys have been chatting in the media or whatever, you had a go at Rodri last week, yeah. So we can all have a little pop.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to hold this firmly and tightly close to your heart, because I've already seen Pep in their little Mickey Mouse parade that they did today or whenever it was, and he was saying, "Oh, trust me, don't worry, FA Cup next year, we'll take it." They're hurting, and I'm so happy that we're able to just send them off into their holidays with an L, because that's the only beauty of how bad we've been. We going off into the sunset with an FA Cup, with a W against them in the last game before we go off to our holidays, and they're going to have to hold on to that next season, and it's beautiful. So yeah, take that, you dirty.
Yeah, and I mean, donkey of the week or donkey of the day, Pep, Rodri, and the Arsenal social media admin. The three of you,
terrible.
No more talking. All right, I don't want to hear anything. Whoever scheduled that post yesterday, you are shameless.
Wow.
And you don't represent the Arsenal fan base. Just let them have their moment. All right, we don't need to talk about 13 versus 14 because you never know, they might win another one next year, and then what are we going to be able to say? So let's just leave this alone. All right, give it a couple of days, give it 48 hours before you have to do this. All right, so donkey of the day for the three of you. No more of that, please. All right, I expect it from the City lot, but Arsenal social media admin, you're better than that, mate.